Thank you for joining us once again on The State of Freedom.
The State of Freedom is a listener-supported podcast. We are committed to pursuing the truth about policymaking, regulatory actions, and political maneuvers in Louisiana and at the national level that stand to impact your freedoms.
Please support The State of Freedom by becoming a monthly supporter or member of the Warrior Circle, or by advertising your business, your nonprofit, or your event with us. Go to freedomstate.us. We are bypassing the mainstream media cartel and the establishment political parties in Louisiana and coming directly to you, spreading the uncensored voice of freedom across Louisiana and beyond. Tigerland Properties, these are licensed professional realtors in Louisiana, commercial, residential, investments, whatever you choose to do. These people, whether you're buying, whether you're selling, whether you want to invest, these people are the best in the business. They really are. Tigerland Properties, mainly they work in the Boot area of Louisiana, down in South Louisiana, but truly you could not be in better hands if you're buying or selling commercial, residential, or investing than Tigerland Properties. I encourage you to call them 225-320-3004. You'll want to make sure you're in good hands with commercial, residential, real estate, or investment, and they are the best.
Good morning. Welcome to the State of Freedom, where we are grounded in faith in the Constitution. We're committed to giving voice to the truth, living with courage, and taking action. It is Tuesday, February 24th. It's 10 a.m. Central, and I'm Danielle Walker. I'm joined by my friend and co-host, the watchdog in chief of Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, Chris Alexander. Good morning, Chris. How are you doing?
Good morning. Good morning, Danielle. How are you today?
I'm great.
Awesome. Glad to hear it.
Yeah, good to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we are coming to you live on Voice of the People USA TV and radio network on Rumble, X, YouTube, and Facebook. Why don't y'all just follow us at all those places? Follow us everywhere you can. And you can always catch us later on our audio-only podcast platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We usually get that out to you later in the same day. Today, we are so honored to have Steve Jarvis back with us. Let me bring him forward. Steve is a fifth-generation regenerative farmer from Idaho. He's an educator on regenerative farming practices through his organization, Sustainable Agrarian Solutions, and he's been raising awareness on the devastation caused by geoengineering and weather modification, and much more than that. Good morning, Steve. Thanks for joining us. How are you?
Good morning. I got just a little bit of cold, so everybody bear with me. I'm good, but I don't know what they're spraying, but it's something.
It is. It's true. It is. They're
always spraying something.
I know. Good grief. Well, let me read the scripture of the day this morning before we get into it. But today I think we'll be talking about the MAHA agenda. We'll be talking about a new governor's task force, and maybe we'll get into the State of the Union expectations around that. So we'll see where the Spirit leads this morning. But today the scripture is 1 Timothy chapter 2, verses 5 through 8. And it says, "For God is one, and there is one mediator between God and the sons of men, the true man, Jesus, the anointed one. He gave himself as a ransom payment for everyone. Now is the proper time for God to give the world this witness. I have been divinely called as an apostle to preach this revelation, which is the truth. God has called me to be a trustworthy teacher to the nations. Therefore, I encourage the men to pray on every occasion with hands lifted to God in worship, with clean hearts, free from frustration or strife." And that last verse, that last sentence is really what struck me this morning. Our worship is a prayer to the Lord. And in this passage, the Apostle Paul is instructing his protege Timothy to pray on every occasion. And as we remember, he told the church at Thessalonica to pray without ceasing. So our view of prayer I was reminded this morning, our view of prayer is probably too narrow. It's the entirety of our connection and communication with God, whether it's worship, whether it's our running internal dialogue to him, or prayer as we typically think about kind of dedicated prayer, whether corporate or personal. But this tells us how we are to pray. In worship, We're to pray to God with clean hearts, free from frustration or strife, which can feel a little challenging these days. But how do we do that? We have to keep very short accounts in terms of our forgiveness of others and ourselves. We have to continually submit ourselves to the searching of Holy Spirit to see if there's any blocking of our communication with the Lord. And worship is the key to that. As we worship the Lord and pay attention, if it feels like there's a wall, we can ask the Lord to reveal to us if we're holding on to frustration, irritation, unforgiveness, worry, and just ask the Lord if there's something you've done maybe that requires seeking forgiveness of someone else. Maybe that's causing a block, because he'll bring it to mind if we ask him. So we can deal with it. We can restore our clean heart, and the blockages and the walls come down. And when we worship God and there's no blockage, there's no walls, we just have that freedom. It's a sign to us that we're properly aligned to the Lord. And so it is possible, and it is a discipline, but it's also super simple. And I love that about the Lord and his instruction to us. And Chris, you and I have talked about this so many times. When the Lord calls us to do something, it's very rarely complicated, but it might not be easy. It might not, it's
Exactly.
simple, but it might not be easy to do in practice. And self-examination is usually not fun when you first do it, but then you get used to it and you just kind of are able to move on from whatever crap you've been dragging around.
Exactly. Yeah. And it is a discipline. It is something I think that you develop over time. And, you know, sometimes when you first start to develop the spiritual discipline, it can be discouraging because you have, setbacks and, people sometimes quit. What's the analogy in the scripture, Danielle? I'm sure Steve knows, where the seed is planted on
Fertile ground.
fertile ground, but it's not very deep, and
Oh,
and
yeah.
and so so it starts to grow, but then because the spirituality is not deep and there's no perseverance, the moment difficulty comes, it dies. And that's kind of the way a lot of people are, but it's a daily discipline and a practice, and but it certainly it's rewarding, I think, if we're able to maintain that habit of spiritual discipline. One of the things that I'm curious about, and I'd like to get Steve to answer this, and you, Danielle. When you talk, Danielle, about what St. Paul said about praying unceasingly, to be always praying constantly. What exactly that looks like? Because obviously when we're in the middle of our work, and we're in the throes of 6 or 8 different tasks we're doing, we're not praying in the sense that most people think of prayer. So what does St. Paul mean? I'm very curious about this, sincerely, when he says we're supposed to pray unceasingly. What does that mean?
Well, I can tell you what it does. The way I do it is, and I take my hat off if I'm going to talk about the Lord or his word. I think it's reverence unto him. But, talking about good soil that is hard. So there's a lot of good ground out there. Like this farm I bought, it'd been farmed and weeded and grazed and tilled and sprayed and everything. And I let it rest for 7 years, but the ground was a little hard. On the first time I go to plow it up, what we do is we take these giant rippers and we put them on the back of a tractor and we drop that thing in the ground and we crack what is called the hard pan down there deep. And we crack that open so that water, like the water of the word, can go down into that ground, so that when you plant on top, you've got good fertile ground, but it's hard. And so, praying without ceasing, here's what I try to encourage people to do. Learn just to talk to the creator of the universe on a common level every day, just like we're talking. I talk to him every day, and you need to talk to him whether you like him or not, because some days we don't like what God's doing and we don't like what's going on. In this verse in Timothy talking about frustration. Well, there's a lot of people I've wanted to punch in the face this last year. And so frustration is just a little small word that maybe I'm going a little above that stuff. But what I have to do is I have to talk to the creator of the universe and tell him, listen, I want to punch this guy in the face, but I know you don't want me to. So I need some help here. And I just talk to him just like a friend, just like somebody. And there's times that it's different, in prayer and things like that. But I would encourage people to talk to the Creator on an everyday basis, just on an hourly by hour, just talk to him. If it's beautiful, sunshiny outside, why not just say to the Creator, Lord, I'm really thankful for the sunshine today. You did such a great job on building that system, and I can't stand the spraying. So, give me wisdom on how to fight in this fight and do the right thing. And talking to him on these things that are simple about your children going to school, about your job, about your marriage, about the food you should grow and eat and things like that. But just a real simple learning to talk to the Creator every day. And I encourage people to get barefooted and stand and ground yourself. That way, you're connected to the earth. You are from the earth, and then you're connected to the Creator who made both of them. And it's really even physically beneficial.
You're talking about Steve, you're talking about literally physically grounded to the soil, to the earth.
To the earth. We are terra firma. We are the earth. We're made from dirt.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, that's an interesting clarification. Talk to the Lord like he is your best friend, sitting right next to you. That's a powerful, powerful concept. Really is. I'm going to try to do that today.
And Chris, I think an awareness of the Lord, like we have an internal monologue, whether we realize it or not, and we can be very self-deprecating. We can say really ugly things to ourselves, or we can channel that and think about the fact that the Lord hears all of our thoughts. Why don't we just talk to him in our thoughts instead of talking down to ourselves, instead of being critical or thinking about focusing on those frustrations? Why don't we talk to the Lord about, like you said, Steve, it's a beautiful day. Thank you. Or, Lord, I have a lot on my plate today. I need your help. Where do I start? That kind of thing. And it can just be your internal monologue.
Yeah.
And let me add this to this. I think this will help your listeners. Years ago, when I was working with people in prison and jail ministry, street ministry, and satanic ritual abuse, and people were trying to exit that, I learned that there are basically three voices that go on in our head every single day. And I can back this up scripturally as well. But there's three basic voices. And the thing about it is, do you hear what you're thinking? That's the real key. That it's not always verbal what you're hearing, but what you're thinking. But basically, you hear yourself, you hear the devil, and you hear God. And when you hear yourself, it's like you go in the store, hey, I need to go get some bullets for my gun, or I need to buy a dress or whatever, or I want a Coke, or I want a hot dog. And these conversations are going on inside. Then there's the voice of the devil. And the voice of the devil says things. And let me just tell you this, in the Christian community, a lot of times the devil will tell you to do too many good things. So you're so stacked up that you really are not prospering in any of those areas. And then there's the voice of God, and the voice of God speaks to you. And let me just tell you this about the voice of the devil. He usually speaks to you in first person. So usually you can't tell that it's him talking to you. And to prove this to you, if you'll look, when the disciples, Jesus says, hey, in 3 days, I'm going to be crucified. And Peter said, I rebuke, he basically was rebuking Jesus, saying, no, this is not going to happen. And he says, get thee behind me, Satan, for you have set your mind, your thoughts on him. And then, but heck, an hour before, he said, you are the Christ. So 1 minute, Peter had a God thought. Next hour, he had a full devil thought. So anybody can be the devil's mouthpiece, and learning to discern which one of those are talking to you or saying things to you. And in this frustrating world with this information overload dump system that we've got going on in our brains, learning how to decipher who's talking and when you cannot turn the voice off, when you can't turn it off, God speaks, and usually he's quiet. You can talk, you can turn it off, but usually, and especially if you have anxiety or fear or trauma or things going on, and this thought comes in your head and it starts like a tape recorder, and then you start talking negative to yourself, then this tape recorder gets to playing in your head and you can't turn that off. This is when you have to know the devil is talking to you in first person.
Golly. I feel like on some levels, Steve, you're describing the way I've experienced life, very often, in my own life, the way that I have spoken so negatively to myself in my life, often. And, and yet somewhere deep down inside, I have this sneaky suspicion that, well, maybe that is God talking to me. Maybe it is God. Maybe he's not whatever what he's stacked up to be. And fortunately, I'm usually able to get out of that, and then convince myself, no, that's not God's voice. That's just good old Christopher Alexander engaging in a relentless barrage of self-criticism. And but it's not God. And I'm learning how to distinguish between my own self-talk and the voice of God and the Holy Spirit. And I think it's really important, for people to be, and I don't think I'm the only one who struggles with that.
Yeah.
Well, let me just tell you, the biggest struggle and the toughest evil spirit to deal with on the planet is the religious spirit. And Jesus warned about these. He warned about the spirit, the spirit of Herod, the spirit of the Pharisees, and the spirit of the Sadducees. And he warned about these. And the spirit of Herod is a baby killer spirit. What it is, you're brand new, you get in there, and then if you can make it out of infancy, but people say, well, you really didn't mean it. You failed in your life, things like that. So the spirit of Herod comes, and these are the toughest three. And once you learn to conquer these and learn to identify these, you'll realize that you learn very quickly. But then the spirit of Pharisees comes in. So you make it out of infant stage of Christianity and you get in there. Then you get this religious spirit of the Pharisees. You get up in the morning, you read 5 verses, you're in a hurry, you're late for work, you scream at the kids, you tell your husband he's ugly, and then you run out the door. Well, the spirit of Herod comes in and says, well, you shouldn't have said all that stuff, and really you should have read more in your verse. So the next day you get up and you read 10 verses, and you do better with your children and your husband. But then you get in the car and this voice whispers, well, you should have read 12.
It's never good enough. It's never good enough.
Exactly.
It will listen. The spirit of the Pharisees never ever lets you do good enough. It never lets you up, and it's so powerful. It's the toughest one to identify. And the third one is the spirit of the Sadducees, and the spirit of the Sadducees is there is no resurrection power for me today.
Wow.
And the thing is, when you get into that mode, you go into those church services, and I've been in every flavor you can imagine. Okay. But when you go into those church services and they say, well, you got to pray in tongues to be saved. And then they say that some say it's from the devil. And I mean, it's so confusing. You actually can just lose your mind even in listening to a lot of this stuff. And what you do is, if you learn to categorize, that's the reason I teach what is called the order of Scripture. And when you learn the order of Scripture, you learn the order of how these things work, what the words are coming in your mind, how you're, self-talk. And you can self-talk. And listen, when I was growing up, I grew up in the era where, your daddy told you was stupid to, when you got out of bed, you know what I mean? All I need is a strong back and a weak mind. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and so the thing about it is, in that era, you learn to talk negative to yourself. And if you just learn that, hey, I mean, listen, I know I'm a punk, and as long as you know you are, then it's all good. As long as you're talking to the Creator, everything's great. But learn to discern, because these spirit of religion, too, these things is tough to get rid of.
Yeah,
that's
great.
That's so good, Steve. And I just want to add to what you're saying, that the scripture also tells us that we have to take every thought captive and make it bow in obedience to Christ. So that literally means, like, hold out your thoughts for inspection, judge your thoughts. And that's exactly how you do what you're saying. You begin to understand, who is this coming from? Is this from me? Is this from the devil? Is this from God? You'll be able to tell whenever you pause. You get into that discipline of making yourself judge where it came from.
Well, let me just tell you this. When I was involved in street ministry and religion and all these different things, I mean, I was just, how it is. You get involved with a church and you're excited about the Lord and you volunteer for one thing. Well, next thing you do, you're just volunteering for everything, right? Sunday school, everything. Well, I remember one time I said, God, I'm not going to church today. I'm going to take my kids fishing. And I said, I can't take the pressure of all this stuff. So I quit. And I literally heard God speak to me and say, good. And that's all
Wow.
he said. And what I did is I quit, excuse me, I quit doing all that stuff. And I started focusing on myself and my family. It was a game changer.
So interesting. In other words, you were able to lift all of the burdens of off of your shoulders. That, you know what, I don't have to do all these things. I don't have to be constantly engaging in work, obligation for this person in order to be good enough for God. That's got to be such a liberating feeling, Steve.
Well, you can go to Out of the Wild 3D. You go on my top pinned video. I've not taught that teaching on the Tabernacle of Moses for 20 something years. Literally, I've been in the wilderness, quiet. And you know why? Because God didn't tell me to do anything else. Excuse me.
Yeah.
And I think, and I just want to add to that, Steve, that maybe like a teachable moment, but the religious spirit would say, now everybody needs to stop doing everything because that's what God told Steve to do. No, you have to listen for yourself. What did God tell you to do? And do that. Steve's not giving broad brush strokes saying, okay, everybody stop going to church, stop volunteering. He's saying, this is what I needed to do to get my life in order with the Lord and with my family.
Yeah.
Yeah. And God told me to write a farm plan for the United States of America.
And you do it. And you're doing it.
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. You already did it. Yeah.
Yeah, I did it.
Well, I guess, I would love to, I love having these discussions. I really, really do. It's just very powerful and enriching. But we got to talk a little bit about glyphosate today.
Oh, yeah.
So Steve, President Trump on February 18th, one of my brother's birthdays, through executive order, has basically assumed federal control over, I think, the manufacture and the production of elemental glyphosate and phosphorus. And there's, a lot of controversy about it. A lot of the health advocates, the environmental groups are saying, this is clearly a carcinogen. It's in Roundup. There's all kind of lawsuits associated with this. And then on the other side, people like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. are saying, well, you know what? Guess what? If we run out of glyphosate right now with no viable alternative, 80% of the crops in the United States are going to end up failing. And then where does that leave us? So what are your thoughts? Is this a necessary evil, or is there an alternative that is viable?
Well, so Bobby Kennedy came to my farm, and when I gave him my farm plan was to create 250,000. The farms are actually 120 acres, but you farm 40 of it in vegetables. And then you rotate. You run cattle or hogs or chickens or whatever. So when he came to my farm, I said, listen, my farm plan is to create 250,000 farms every year for 5 years and 10,000 new processing centers. Okay. What I wanted to do is, because I understood that giant ag is addicted to these chemicals. Okay. And there is a lot of truth to the fact that if you just cut it off tomorrow, these guys can't grow food. This is true. Okay. But a lot of this is ethanol. You have to learn to look at this from a 90,000 foot view. So what I was trying to do is recreate a brand new birth, a big push. It would have been the largest historical agricultural farm rejuvenation revolution in American history, actually, if they would have followed my plan. Because what I said to Bobby Kennedy while he was here at my farm is, I said, now I have a plan, an exit strategy for large ag. I said, I understand the chemical world. My dad was head of USDA. My dad had a chemical spraying company in Texas, along with why he was ASCS office down there in East Texas. So I understood these chemicals, what they were used for, how they work, and all that. And so I told him, I said, we need to initiate this. It would have been the Farm Corps. We would have brought the military in. We literally set up a new Farm Corps like the Army Corps of Engineers. I mean, I had it A to Z. And see, Bobby Kennedy really shouldn't even have come to my farm, because I'm not going to lie. I got a lot of other faults, but I'm not going to lie. And I'm a no BSer, and I'm not going to sit here just because you're, your family's been in government, you've been, people know you around the world, and you come to my farm. I don't care. Okay. And so he shouldn't have come to my farm, because now he knew, you understand? It's not like Bobby Kennedy's up here standing up here talking about glyphosate when he didn't have a plan given to him. He had one given to him that told him how, A to Z, every single part of it. And not only that, I already had I spent about 60 days, and I made 181 videos for this school, so that when we'd hit this thing, it would be like D-Day. And I really thought Bobby Kennedy could convince Brooke Rollins and President Trump to do this. I really did, because let's face it, Bobby Kennedy was a strong candidate in the libertarian side, and he was coming in, with the Democrats, and a lot of Democrats liked him. And so when he joined and sided with Republicans, we thought, right? Did we think this was a win-win for everyone?
Yeah.
It's so disappointing. And so when he came here, I told him, I said, listen, we initiate my first plan, and then I'll show you my second plan on how to exit the glyphosate and herbicide world as much as possible with big ag.
Is it possible, Steve, to do it completely, and what time frame? Let's just say we woke up tomorrow morning and they fully implemented the Steve Jarvis plan. What kind of time frame are we looking at, and is it possible to completely eliminate it?
Okay, so on the Steve Jarvis plan on the big ag is 14 years. If you started today, it takes 14 years. And the reason it takes 14 years is Mother Nature has to get involved. But let me just say this, there are microbes and there are plants that people have from all over the world, and scientists, good scientists, have ways to help get this out of the soil and develop ways, but you have to get rid of big ag. I mean, we got to go back to small farming.
Yeah. 100%.
Is that because big ag has such an extraordinary profit incentive here?
Well, how do you get rid of weeds on 10,000 acres? Yeah. You're not sitting on a tractor cultivating 10,000 acres.
That's true. Yeah.
Steve, why do you think they haven't put your plan in place? Why did your plan get put on a shelf in your mind?
Well, one of the reasons is the people in MAHA said it was too big. The plan's too big. It's too large. And people said, "Hey, how about we do this on a smaller scale? Let's do a town or whatever." I said, because God didn't tell me to.
And I think people are really eager to get back to soil, get back to gardening and learning how to do some of this stuff that has been really lost for a generation, maybe two.
Well, and I'm the only farmer in America that writes his own moon phase calendar. And I know that this may freak some people out, but I do use the signs of the zodiac, but I take all the devil stuff out of it. The thing about it is the Rothschilds stole all that stuff.
Yeah. And
started using witchcraft and sorcery and necromancy and astrology and all that kind of stuff. And the thing about it is I take all that out. But it's the moon phase calendar is your green thumb. And it's on my website, sas-usa.com. But it is your green thumb. And once you learn to farm by that, it makes you very, very successful.
So, Steve, when Robert F. Kennedy Jr. justifies this executive order, this federal takeover of the production and manufacture, essentially, of elemental glyphosate in order to make sure that, we have enough of it and that the food supply is secure. And his justification for it is that there is no viable alternative. I read that he said that. You're saying there absolutely is a viable alternative.
Well, what you have to do is you have to cultivate your field. Okay. When you're growing potatoes, I don't use glyphosate. I don't use herbicides on mine. I didn't down there in Texas. But you have to plow. But see, here's what you have to problem. The purist in the MAHA movement, the purist, kiss the ground, common ground, all these clowns sorry, but they have this purist model, but these purist model, plowing destroys the soil. Well, the Bible says that if you don't plow in the winter, you're a fool. So, and it talks about cultivating. And what people don't realize is when you plow or rotary cultivate, especially your plants, you take out the weeds and you inject oxygen into the soil. And that is the biggest game changer. And that's what I do. I teach high production on small acreage. We farmed 35 acres. We had 111 in Texas. We farmed 35 acres. We shipped 500,000 pounds of food to 10 grocery stores per year.
Wow. Steve, you may have said this, or you may have already answered this. You don't use any of these synthetic chemicals on your crops?
That's why Bobby Kennedy came to my farm. I mean, it's kind of like, that's what I'm saying. RFK should have never come to my farm because he's standing in a field that had been, I had let this field rest for 7 years. It's biblical. You got things that are out of order. You got to let it rest. So I let this farm rest for 7 years, and then I plowed the ground. I plowed all that old matter down in the ground, planted the potatoes. The only thing I did, I grew half the field 100% organic, and the other half I used a little commercial fertilizer. Now, this is what happens. We have a war with giant ag, and we have a war with the purist. And I'm stuck in the middle. I've been trying to create a middle of the road. It's called sustainable farming. And you boys and girls are down there in Louisiana. If you don't have a little bit of carbol, which is 7 dust, or a little bit of malathion, when the yellow grasshopper shows up, what happens to your garden?
It's gone.
Yeah. So so Steve, you do use some of the synthetic fertilizer now, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're not a complete, as you said, purist on the issue.
The purists are just as dangerous as the glyphosate group. They're just as dangerous.
Yeah.
Because they're not, they don't live in reality. What I want to do is I want to take these purists, and we'll have a farm challenge down there in Louisiana. We'll say, all right, we're going to give everybody 10 acres. And you got to grow sweet potatoes, and you have to make this production. And LSU has what the production is. This is what you should make, right? It tells you. All right, so here you go. So you give one to the purist, and you give one to the giant ag guy, and you give one to the sustainable guy like me. And I'm going to blow these guys out so fast. And the purist guy is going to be sitting down there with his little vacuum cleaner with pantyhose on it, sucking up potato beetles, and his wife's in there crushing them in a jar and making some sort of juice spray to spray on his field next day. They ain't gonna have nothing. And this is the problem. People lose their minds in the purist movement.
It's true. It's true. And I think it's the same about the narratives. It's the place that we're living in right now. The extremes are so extreme, and the people in the middle and the solutions in the middle are the ones that get completely undercut as a result of everybody else on the margins being crazy.
Well, I get killed in every way because if I say in my let's talk about, y'all know what a locust tree is down there in Louisiana. Got thorns on it about that long. It'll puncture a tractor tire. We had them bad in East Texas. What we would do is we would rent a big field or something from somebody that was, ground was kind of sorry. Well, it'd have locust trees in it, about like that.
Wow.
Well, what happens when you plow a locust tree? Every little sliver that the disc cuts up makes another tree. So if you got one, now you're going to have 1,000, and they can puncture your tractor tire. So what we would do is we would take glyphosate, Roundup, and we would spray that field one time, and then we would burn it off and plow it in, and we would never ever have to do that again for another 15 years. And see,
so you only had to do it. You only had to do it one time. You're saying
one time.
Wow. So I want to make sure that I'm clear on something here, Steve, that I understand the explanation. Robert F. Kennedy's explanation to you, was it that the problem is too big for your solution to work, or your plan was too big? What was, I'm trying to make sure I'm clear on what his basis is for not implementing.
My plan was too large. My plan was too large.
What exactly does that mean?
Well, it was $375 billion a year, and that's if the government did it. If you do it on a private level, it's $700 billion a year. So right there alone, people just lose their mind on these numbers. But if you dig into the budget, please help me. There is enough money.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Just
Oh,
in
man.
Minneapolis, I think.
Oh,
Yeah, exactly. Just look what Elon Musk, exposed, for crying out loud. So he was basically saying that it's too expensive.
too large. It's basically too hard. Think
Okay.
about 250,000. Where are you going to get the land from? I already had it all set up,
Oh,
how to
yeah.
find the land. Basically, in my farm plan, we confiscate all foreign ground. That's part of it.
Well, that's beautiful. We would love to see that happen
You
here. We've been trying.
confiscate all land, excuse me, Danielle, you confiscate all land that's owned by a foreign entity?
100% of it.
What do you think about that, Danielle?
Well, I think at least the foreign adversaries' land needs to be confiscated. We've been fighting for that here in Louisiana with very little success so far.
Yeah.
Well, here's how you do it. Let me give you the recipe on how to do it. So your attorney general, what he does is he sues China for COVID damages for the tune of about $7 billion or whatever your acreage is. Okay. Sets a court date. China doesn't show up, doesn't pay up. Then you acquire the land.
That's pretty brilliant.
So basically you get what's Steve, you get what's the you sue China and you get what's really the functional equivalent of a default judgment against them because they don't respond and don't participate. You let any appeal delays run, then you have a final judgment and you go get the land.
And the attorney general can do it all by himself.
That's
See,
so
this is the
beautiful.
problem with my plan. See, my plan, there's nothing left out. Nothing. This is why RFK, that's where I left MAHA. I'm done because you had a plan. Now, let's just say Bobby Kennedy had never come to my farm. Let's say I'd have never written a plan. No, you have one.
What did he tell you, Steve?
My farm plan. There's video. Secretary Kennedy, they put videos out of my being on my farm, and he talked about it, how great it was, and this is going to be, the future of farming and blah, blah. No.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the future of farming, Steve, I think you may have seen this, but the USDA under Secretary Rollins launched something called the Rural Revival Governors Task Force. And it says that it's focusing on delivering wins for farmers, ranchers, and rural communities in the heartland through state and federal collaboration. The task force emphasizes empowering rural America, aligning priorities like agriculture, economic development, and producer support. And I just want to run through the list of governors who are on this new task force that was, I believe, initiated this week or a couple days ago, maybe the end of last week. Governor Joe Lombardo from Nevada, Governor Jeff Landry from Louisiana, Governor Jim Pillen from Nebraska, Brad Little from Idaho, Sarah Huckabee Sanders from Arkansas, Mike Dunleavy from Alaska, Mike Kehoe from Missouri, and Kim Reynolds from Iowa. What's your take on this? I mean, I come from a Washington background, so I'm used to big announcements that have a lot of words but don't say very much. Do you think this is going to do something?
Okay, this is the hard part for people. The hard part for people is that Trump gets on stage and says, I've got Bobby Kennedy. We're going to find out what causes autism, what is poisoning our food, blah, 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 blah. Campaign speech, right? So here is a ream of paper. And this is how Brooke Rollins and the USDA talk. They just say, we're going to do all this. But this ream of paper is full of all the regulatory bullshit in it. And the thing about it is, everything she's talking about, everybody should listen up to this very carefully. If they could do what they're talking about doing, they're already in the second year of this term, right?
Yeah.
So nothing is going to happen this year. And now they're going to put all this stuff out and they're going to be fault. They do this stuff on purpose because they know that it'll just be a battle till the next administration comes along.
And the battle, Steve,
is all hogwash.
And Steve, is the battle because of forces that within the administration who don't want to do it, or is the battle because of all of the mountain of existing regulations that exist?
There, listen, if you want to look at the people that are in charge of the United States, our government is number 6 on the list of being in charge. They're not in charge. That's what you have to understand. Big agriculture is number 3 on the list. That's the reason Trump came out and made this statement. And Brooke Rollins is for big ag. She comes from that. She destroyed her and Rick Perry. And just so y'all know, Rick Perry, I was wondering where that cat was. And come to find out, he's the guy that has this company called, I believe it's called Fermi, and they're the ones building the data centers in Texas, the largest one. So, Rick Perry and Brooke Rollins did a great job in what they did. But, we're going to do Go Texans. See, they give all these things and they get the purist online. Listen, folks, our government, Brooke Rollins, knows how to say everything correctly that absolutely knows that it won't happen.
Yeah. How much, Steve, if they started doing your plan, let's just say they fully implemented the Steve Jarvis plan, a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, whatever, how much of a difference how much would that reduce big ag's bottom line as far as their profit?
It wouldn't even touch 5% of it in 5 years. Okay, this is what I tried to tell everybody. Don't fight big ag. Let's stay out of the pesticide deal, because you're going to get your teeth kicked in. You're not going to win. I told MAHA this in May in 2025. I said, you're not going to win. Don't fight them. Let's start a new deal, rebuild the small ag. Do you realize that the main thing in my farm plan was number 1 was national defense? And now Brooke Rollins is coming out with all this national defense and signing that junk with Pete Hegseth. That's the biggest crock of hooey in the world. National defense was number 1 because we're importing 25% of our food. Okay. What that means is if there's no food this winter, 25% of Americans die. The second part of it is I would change school lunches.
Yeah.
But what people don't realize is, we're going to change school lunches. No, you're not. And the reason you're not going to do school lunches is because Cisco Foods and U.S. Foods controls 88% of every bit of these contracts that are in the state school systems and the colleges. You're not changing it. You think you're going to grow the food and you're going to do this. No, you don't have the contract and you're not getting it because that's the mafia.
Yeah.
Listen, I laid this out how to do this. Literally, it would take 5 years to create 1 million new farms. You create 10,000 new processing centers. That would be 50,000 new processing centers. Then we have a new administration that may TKO the whole entire thing. But if we hit it like D-Day, which we would have just started, we would have already put in 250,000 farms. But now we're in here coming into the spring. I know for sure down there, I've farmed in Texas. You guys down in Louisiana, people have already planted new potatoes down there in that part of the world. Okay. So we're so far behind the 8 ball. Yeah, it's a disaster.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to dismantle big ag, you took a different route and say, let me just do my own thing, my own alternative approach to this, and see where it goes, and try to grow it in development as a viable alternative without directly challenging the cabal.
Yeah, because what are you going to do? You're going to challenge Walmart, Costco, Kroger's? Yeah. No, you're not going to do that. Are you going to challenge the big 4 big packers? No, you're not going to do that. I said, let's rebuild this system and let's take care of 3 categories: national defense, school lunches, and hospital food. And if we would have done that, none of the food that was from my farms would have went into any grocery store in 4 years. None of it.
Wow.
That's how big this is why people can't grasp in their minds. They get on this purist movement and they watch little Susie in her little skimpy little cut off short shorts in her garden bending over, and they can't wrap their brain around how much food it takes to feed this country, 330 million people. And they're screaming all this stuff while we're being undermined, and TKO while we're losing 63 farms and ranches per day.
And Steve, I want to talk about that losing 63 farms and ranches per day. So when you think about big ag, it is a lot like almost every industry in this country where some big industry has taken over and it's
Mhm.
pushed out. I mean, you think about Walmart, like big retail has pushed out mom and pop stores that used to be able to provide everything that a community needed. Same thing with big ag. Is there any movement or have you heard any discussion about at least putting a moratorium on big ag continuing to buy up these smaller farms? Because to me, that there needs to be some kind of barrier so that big ag doesn't just continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger and the food get worse and worse and worse.
Well, if you wanted to, I wrote a plan called the PED plan. You can go to my website. It's www.sas-usa.com. You go to important links, and you go to the important links, and in the important links, what you'll see there is a link that's called the PED plan, PEAD. And this is a presidential emergency agricultural directive. And this plan was 1 through 31. Brian Massard and I wrote this together, the RFK's ranch advisor. He lives just across the border here in Montana. He and I got together, wrote this plan. This plan could have been implemented. It would have only taken 4 days to implement this plan. We met with the Small Business Administration. They loved the plan. They understood it, and they knew how to implement it. And all we needed was a meeting with President Trump and the Secretary of Treasury. And all they would have had to done this, if you really wanted to stop the bleeding and stop the takeover of Bill Gates, farm countries, giant ag, buying up farmland, well, you got to stop the foreclosures. Is
Yeah,
everybody with me on that? You got to understand
100%.
this. If you don't understand how the destruction is happening, there's no way to mend it. So the PED plan, what it would have done is it would have put all this money into the Small Business Administration. It would have bypassed USDA because I didn't want the SNAP program, which is 80% of the USDA, which is food stamps, which should be called the food stamp. Brooke Rollins is great. She should run the food stamp deal. She's about that level of smart. She just should run the food stamp program. Okay, and you take this money and you put it in SBA, and then you send it to the banks, and you do a restructuring of the loans, and you put a cap. The cap is at $15 million. If your farm or ranch is over $15 million in gross income, you can't be a part of the program because then that knocks out giant ag. Are y'all following
Yeah.
me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now what you do is you give these farms a 1 to 4% loan, and you just transition it. This all could have been done in 4 days.
And Steve, they understand it. The administration understands it because this is exactly what they did to stop Vanguard and those big companies from buying up residential properties, which was creating the home crisis, the housing crisis in the country. And you can see the model works the same across every single sector of society. Uh, I guess it's these big interests that are backed by dark money that have come in and flooded out every single aspect of our country. It's amazing if you really step back and look at it.
Well, it's strategic.
Yeah.
And and let me just tell you this, the Federal Reserve has issued a message to all the banks across America that have ag loans. And when a bank gets a message from the auditor people, group people, the guys that they don't like coming into their banks, when you get this message that says ag is high risk, because y'all high risk means
Right.
we got a
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah. You
Okay.
get a higher interest rate. Yeah.
So the Federal Reserve, you've had 4 car wrecks and you're going to want to
Yeah.
go in there and buy a new car. No, you're not buying it. Well, maybe at 21% interest. But so what happens is agriculture has been labeled at high risk. So now all banks across the United States, you have to be anybody under $15 million in farm value. Okay. Anybody under 15 million does not get a new operating loan even if they have a good LTV. LTV stands loan to value. So they're knocking out the small guys, and that's the problem. Man, you got to know how to look behind the scenes. And the only reason I do know how to look behind the scenes is because I got killed by Brooke Rollins and Rick Perry under that administration and under the Go Texans. So did my wife's dairies. You know, I mean, if you just go through, I've been killed 5 times in agriculture, and it's all because of government.
Wow. What a statement. What a statement. You know, that every difficulty that you've suffered in your personal enterprise, private enterprise, trying to grow your business and provide a real alternative for American citizens, all of the frustration comes from the government.
And the thing about it is what happened in the 2000. You know, I mean, I was out of business. I was agriculturist of the year in 2010. In 2011, I was out of business. It was because of the Food Modernization Act. And that's what you have to understand. These bills and these things are put in, they're not put in to save American farms. They're put in for destruction. And the reason is you got 5 levels above the government. Technocracies control this country. They're number 1. Big Pharma is number 2. Ag is number 3. And then we go down to a couple other clowns that are in there, and they know how to do this. And they'll stick somebody on stage and say, like Brooke Rollins, and say, oh my gosh, we're going to get all these governors together, and these governors are going to just get us, and we're going to start regenerative farming, blah, 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 blah. And they just like a bobblehead. And then they know it's not going to work. They know this.
And Steve, can you think of anything other than it being a demonic agenda? Because what other agenda destroys itself? I was talking to Chris about this in another context the other day, but I'm like, who burns their own house down? There's only 2 kinds of people I can think of, maybe 3, who burn their house down. One is someone who's committed a crime. One is someone who needs the insurance money. And the third might just be because you're crazy. I can't come up with another reason.
Well, I made a video on this, and it's in Timothy. It says, he who does not provide, it's like 1 Timothy 5 somewhere in there. It says, and he who does not provide for his own and his household denies the faith and is worse than an unbeliever.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's demonic. I mean, Bobby Kennedy and Brooke Rollins are running around with a glass of milk while the house is on fire. They're leaning by the mailbox, dancing with Kid Rock, who looks like he just recovered from a meth clinic. And the thing is it looks like to me that it must be Brooke Rollins's OnlyFans page is what they're doing. You got Brooke Rollins is running around setting up an OnlyFans page for old people, because you got RFK and you got Kid Rock, who, I'm sorry, look at the lyrics to his music, Christian family. Get you a drink and learn what the word says. And the fact is, you're all bought off and you pay attention to this stuff, and they're out there drinking milk, and you're sitting in your house and your own house is on fire.
Yeah. Well, Steve, I'm not sure that anybody is going to ever accuse you of not saying exactly how you feel in a way that is utterly impossible to imitate. And that's yet one of the reasons why I love having you on the State of Freedom. Not only are you informative, but you're absolutely delightfully hilarious to talk to. And God bless you, man.
Thank you. Well, listen, you notice I didn't use even any swear words in this whole thing, which I wanted.
Only one. Only one.
Only one. Maybe I did use one. So what I'm trying to say is listen, everybody needs to grow their own food. I've reduced my school. My farm school was $2,000. It's $500. Ladies, get 5 ladies together with some kids. Do the farm school. If you don't grow food, the plan is to starve Americans. That's the plan.
Wow. That's pretty sinister. Pretty sinister. Well, we're going to keep fighting. You're a very valuable resource and a real treasure to us and to the country.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. We love you. God bless you.
Love y'all.
You never know what you're going to get with Steve coming on. He's always got something. I really love having him. I think you're so right, Chris. Our conversations with him, especially on the spiritual front, are always so rich. And the conversation today, I thought, on that executive order, where people were losing their minds at the end of last week and over the weekend, saying that Trump is endorsing Roundup and he's giving blanket immunity to Bayer for Roundup causing cancer. That is patently not true. I mean, you looked at it, I looked at it. That's not what it does. But it does have a recognition of the fact of what Steve was saying, that if there's no way for farms to completely get rid of this in 1 year, and I was looking at it, I'd seen someone posted about Sri Lanka in 2015. They tried to they did a ban on glyphosate, and they tried to implement it in the same year, and they had massive widespread crop failures and had to import food. It was a serious disaster for them, and it caused a lot of pain to a lot of people. So I think, we have to look at real life lessons and say, look, if we can't do it right away, he had a step down approach that would take 14 years to get rid of it. So at least we have to start moving in that direction. But I do understand and appreciate that President Trump doesn't necessarily want us to be relying on our foreign adversaries for these products, because I think a lot of the glyphosate comes out of China, probably, I would
Yeah,
imagine.
I think so too. And, Danielle, a lot of people can die in 14 years,
Yeah.
and so, based upon what I've seen, you and I had said, earlier that, I mean, this is a necessary evil to do what we're doing right now, but certainly the incentive should be there to begin moving in a different direction,
Yeah.
to begin moving to a new system. And I think Steve, does have a plan. I hope he keeps knocking on the door,
I know. I do
and
too.
I really do,
And
because he's
Chris,
absolutely brilliant.
he is absolutely brilliant, and really a treasure. I mean, a treasure of knowledge about this kind of farming that has really been lost in America in a large way. And I want to think about, Chris, too, the fact that we are seeing so many politicians talk a good game and then have no follow through. We're kind of conditioned to believe that everything is going to be a headline and nothing is going to actually trickle down and happen. And we're not seeing, it's easy for us to feel like we're not seeing a lot of action. And I just want to remind ourselves and our viewers, President Trump, what he's having to undertake is so gargantuan. If you really think about, okay, agriculture is one massive aspect of this. You think about the national security aspect. You think about the financial aspect. You think about the border crisis and the trafficking. I mean, there's no I don't even know how you wake up in the morning and know that you have all this stuff to deal with and you can cope. Like, God has put a special grace on this man, but that doesn't mean that he's not having to work with a lot of people who are full of bluster and blather. And we know that he is. We know that he is. And we see it. We absolutely do. And so I, I want us to give grace to President Trump and his administration, because they are undertaking something that is so gargantuan. But also, that means that we still have to stay active, because we can't rely on anybody else to do anything for us. And part of that is being involved at home. Part of that is keeping people honest and saying, hey, these were your campaign promises. You have followed through on none of them, or you followed through. You did a great job on two, but the rest of the list has fallen by the wayside. Maybe you need to turn your attention back to the people.
Yeah. Danielle, it's such a great point. It's amazing how so many of these politicians, they don't, not only do they often fail to implement their campaign promises, oftentimes they know full well, even when they make the promises, that they're not going to be implementing the promises, that they're saying things in order to be elected, and they probably know that it can't be done, or they don't really want to do it, but they say what they have to say to get elected. But what you said about Trump struck me, the Herculean task that he has every single day. It's just it is impossible for us to conceptualize. And I think about that a lot, Danielle, when I see all of these people, including people I respect, sort of relentlessly criticizing President Trump because he didn't do this or he didn't do that or he hasn't taken this particular action. And it's so easy to forget the extraordinary things, not only that he has done, but that he does every single day for our country, while he's surrounded by quislings, surrounded by people who would stab him in the back in a moment's notice if they thought they could get away with it. People who do not even deep down inside philosophically agree with what he's doing, but they're not in a position strategically to openly betray him or openly try to condemn him because he's in control and he's the president of the United States. But he has very few people around him who have principled loyalty to him. You could probably count them on one hand or even three fingers, and yet he's still accomplishing great things for our country. So it's going to be a long, long time before I sit down and become habituated to criticizing our president. I am in awe of our president for the things that he does for this country and continues to do. And I thank God for him.
Yeah, and Chris, I'll just point out that you like to talk about the keyboard warriors who are so quick to criticize and point out the flaws and the failures, but very, very slow to actual action on their own
God,
part.
that is so true, Danielle. It's like it's so amazing, and and so we're criticized sometimes, or they'll criticize certain things that are not being done, and the moment I respond, and I don't really pull this too often, but when I see it, somebody relentlessly negative on social media or criticizing us, finally I say, when are you going to be able to come down to the legislature? Or when's the last time that you did a very important call to action for LeCag? Or what exactly are you doing concretely to help change the complexion of the political environment in Louisiana? And guess what? They
Crickets.
never respond, and you
Yeah.
never hear from them again.
Yeah. So let me just encourage everyone watching, because I know that our viewers are people of action. And I know that LeCag has a lot of calls to action already up in advance of the March 9th legislative session kickoff. So today, if you're watching, go to lecag.org and go to the Action Center. Take action on those issues that are important to you. There's going to be a lot more where that came from. We're excited about what the possibilities that this session holds. But it's going to take a lot of pressure from the public, and it's going to take a lot of prayer to see some of these things turned around that we have been fighting for several years to no avail. I think the momentum's changing. Sorry, Chris, but
No problem.
it's going to require people putting their shoulder to the wheel on this.
Absolutely. And we've won significant victories at the legislature. We've won a lot at the legislature. And I feel very hopeful, not only for what we've accomplished, but what we're going to continue to accomplish. I have tremendous optimism about where we're going. I do think the pendulum is swinging. And, there are a lot more of us than there are of them, but we need everybody involved. We need everybody supporting the state of freedom, everybody supporting LeCag, everybody doing the calls to action. And we're going to have a great session, and we'll talk more about the specific bills that are coming up that we're working on and what we're supporting and opposing. But people know who we are, Danielle. I've had 2 reps call me in the last week to ask me, how do you feel about this? Can you help me with this? They know who we are, and they do not want to do things deliberately if they can avoid it, that will raise our ire or get them in our crosshairs. And that's exactly where we want to be.
Yeah. And Chris, we spend a lot of time talking about the fights at the legislature, but I also want to say that we also need to be up in force, supporting people who are bringing good pieces of legislation, backing up the people who have the courage to do what we've asked them to do. We cannot leave them hanging out there on their own. We have to show up. We have to support them. We have to encourage them. We have to call them and give the, let them know that we're cheering for them, that we're grateful for them. I think, it works both ways. Yes, we need to fight against the negative things, but we also really need to be the reinforcements for those people who have courageously stood up and want to do the right thing for the people.
Absolutely. They count on us.
Yeah.
This army of patriots, they count on us and they believe in us because they know, Danielle, that we are more loyal to them, more steadfastly loyal to them than most of their own colleagues are. And it's
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah.
There's no real loyalty in the legislature. They're all consumed with self-interest.
Yeah.
And to the extent that they're engaged in the desire for self-enrichment or self-ambition, yeah, they have a common cement of union. It's very sinister, but they have that common denominator. So it appears that they're somewhat loyal to one another. But they're just the ones who are not patriots and the ones who are doing things for the wrong reasons. It's just a cabal of mutual self-enrichment and back scratching that goes on in the legislature. So you're right. We have to protect and help the good ones and help them to feel fortified and buttressed. And that's what we do. And there are a growing number of good ones.
Yeah.
Because we have both the carrot and the stick on the State of Freedom and LeCag. And guess what? We're not afraid to use either one of them.
Well, that's true. I think we have a good, solid track record of that, Chris.
We do.
And just a reminder for folks, if you have not yet joined the Warrior Circle, please do that. Subscribe to the State of Freedom. Support us. It gives you the right to ask questions in the chat and get them answered on Warrior Wednesdays and other days as well. If you get up in the chat, we'd love to see you there. And we just appreciate the support. It helps us keep things going. And the software that we use costs a lot of money. And if you are also interested in advertising, or if you know of a business that would be a good fit for the State of Freedom's advertising, put them in touch with us. We want to work with good people, principled organizations that support the local community with their services and their products. So please reach out to us if you have any interest at all in advertising. We can come up with a special plan for you if what we have isn't a good fit.
Absolutely. We need your financial support if we're going to continue to grow. With it, we will grow by leaps and bounds. Without it, we're just not going to grow. Yeah. And so we need your support. You are the wind beneath the wings. So get on there, donate monthly, whatever amount is manageable or reasonable for you, and know that you are supplying the fuel for the jet engine and the jet airline that is going to return this state to you and this government to you. Know that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
And God bless you, Danielle. I've got to get on this Zoom that I'm going to talk to these people up in Shreveport. So
let me give two quick announcements, Chris.
Yeah.
Sorry, just really quickly. The first one is that tomorrow on For the Love of Freedom, I'm hosting Praying Medic again. We'll be talking about spiritual questions and current affairs. I think probably the State of the Union will feature in some of the conversation. It probably has to, since that's tonight. And on Thursday, we will have Doc Pete Chambers with us. He is a candidate for governor of Texas. And this will be probably one of his last appearances before, I think his primary is March 3rd. So coming up really, really quick. So we're excited to be able to get him on before the primary and get his message out, because I know he is a strong conservative and shares a lot of our values.
Very, very excited about meeting Doc and talking with Doc. Yeah. We are, Danielle, we're the go-to in Louisiana, LeCag and the State of Freedom. And I'm just proud to be a part of it.
Me too, Chris. Thank you. God bless you, and enjoy your conversation with the folks in Shreveport here shortly.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Fuego. It's just unbelievable. Whether it's the flame grilled carne asada or a signature mango margarita, I had one of those too. They're serving up a literal feast of freedom at Calle Fuego. It's just extraordinary. I love the owners, Andres and Jose. They run such a great restaurant. The service is extraordinary. The atmosphere is great. So if you're in Pineville in the Alexandria area or passing through, or if you live there, go to Calle Fuego and tell them the State of Freedom sent you. Blanco Brothers has been in business in Louisiana for about 30 years now. I have personal experience with this company, and I know others who have as well. If you have a business or a home and you've got roofing, gutter, sheet metal issues at all, one number you need to know, and that's Blanco Brothers Construction. He will treat you right financially, and he will take very good care of you with regard to the quality of the service that he provides. I cannot recommend Blanco Brothers Construction more highly enough. Memorize the number 225-226-4222. Blanco Brothers Construction, the very best in the business.
Thanks for joining us today on the State of Freedom. Any follow-up actions, resources, and links to our sponsors will be in the show notes. All calls to action can be taken at lacag.org. That's LACAG.org.
To learn more about our work, become a monthly subscriber, supporter, or advertiser at freedomstate.us. The State of Freedom, the #1 conservative podcast in Louisiana.